Welcome to CMO Confidential, the podcast that takes you inside the drama, decisions, and choices that go with being the head of marketing. Hosted by five-time CMO Mike Linton.
Welcome, marketers, advertisers, and those who love them to Chief Marketing Officer Confidential. CMO Confidential is a program that takes you inside the drama, the decisions, and the politics that go with being the head of marketing at any company in what is one of the most scrutinized jobs in the executive suite. I'm Mike Linton, the former Chief Marketing Officer of Best Buy, eBay, Farmers Insurance, and Ancestry.com. Now, this show is brought to you by Props, our title sponsor. Props is a performance-driven content platform which combines the attraction of creator content with the results of paid media. Instead of impressions and posts, Props takes responsibility for leads and customers. Check them out at props.co. I'm here today with my guest, Josh Golden. Today's topic, vulnerability and personal branding in the C-suite. Two-edged swords. Now, Josh is the CMO of Quad, a marketing experience company, and the creator of Eureka and Three Things, which are video series where he gets to talk to amazing people about the spark of inspiration. Previously, he was the president and publisher of Ad Age and the CMO of Story Worldwide. So we are going to assign him an expert rating on storytelling. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you so much, Mike. My goodness, I listened to this podcast and watched the video series. I feel I'm a little starstruck. I'm so excited to do this. And I hope that I can deliver both sides of the double-edged sword for you today.
Now there's 4 total sword cuts.
Right, sorry. This is like a game of Game of Thrones episode. It's just gonna get bloody.
All right. So with a little background, marketers are usually responsible for telling their company story, but today we're really going to use Josh to focus in on the marketer's story, both inside and outside the company. It will start with inside the company.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion about bringing your whole self to work and showing your human side. And I want to ask, does that really help a leader? And how do people measure things like this on a regular basis?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm a big believer in both authenticity and vulnerability, only because, to be honest, I've tried other things and they didn't necessarily work. In my early days of leadership in my 30s, I was like, I tried command and control. I was like, do it this way. It's better. It doesn't work as well. I learned, and I think being authentic and bringing your, who you are, but also saying what you don't know is extraordinarily powerful. And it creates a kind of, in my mind, everyone's in the same foxhole. And that environment where you're together and being honest and vulnerable creates an opportunity for real engagement. I will tell you that humility and authenticity is sometimes, as we're going to be discussing this double-edged sword, it's not always received well.
Yeah, and let's talk about vulnerability, because vulnerabilities, I think everyone agrees you got to be your authentic self, because if you're fake, it takes a lot of energy. But the vulnerability thing is, how much vulnerability do you show? Because a lot of people don't want to be in a crisis and have the leader go, I have no idea.
I have no idea. What should we do?
I don't know. I haven't even thought this could happen. So let's talk about the degrees of vulnerability. And then if you can share some personal examples.
Yes.
Because let's not say you should just share everything as leader. Like you can't say, I really hate what's going on with the company. I think we're going down the drain. Let's talk about the degrees of vulnerability.
Yeah. So I think that I think for all marketers, we all know this. You have to read the room, right? What's right? What's the right thing we need to deliver when you're talking to the troops? And many times it's about looking to figure out what is that we're trying to achieve. And I think that Joel, for example, my boss, who's the CEO of Quad, is a fabulous cultural leader. He really does understand what it's like to read that room, and knowing how open he needs to be at times is exactly the right thing you need. Like, I need more of a this than that. And I think those moments, actually him leading that way empowered me to feel like, well, I'm going to do the same type of leadership style because that's what the company culture feels like. Quad is a Midwestern culture, always focused on doing the right thing for the marketer, and knowing that the marketer's job is complex. 77% of the marketers are saying like, oh my God, my job is just getting more and more difficult. Well, being vulnerable as a marketer when you're feeling that pressure is challenging. So the question you asked is, how do you know what right level of vulnerability to be?
Right.
I think it really does matter that, where you're showing that you're always respectful of the culture, because as Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So having people who like to be together and work together and have that authenticity and vulnerability with each other makes it better, because you feel like, oh, we're all in the same team and it feels good. At the same time, if you are overly wishy-washy, people won't want to follow you. They won't feel that sense of, guys, it's warped to that way.
Right.
Any questions?
Yeah. And some of the things about vulnerability is once you say you totally have no idea about something and are completely vulnerable, that can actually follow you around a lot.
Yeah.
So give us some personal examples.
Yeah, of course.
Past vulnerability stories.
These are tough, but I'm going to do it today, Mike, because I want to go there. So I
Go,
would tell
Josh.
you that so I have epilepsy, and I came out about this about, I guess it was 2.5. Never talked about it ever to anyone ever, because you don't, or at least that's what they said in the 80s. And they were like, don't tell anybody, they'll treat you differently. It was super, super hard. So I, talked to my comms team, because I was like, I was 50 at the time. And I was like, I just want to say to young people that it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to have something that makes you imperfect. And surprisingly enough, Mike, I was not fully prepared for this, but it was received when I put it out on LinkedIn, like my fucking platform that everyone listens to me on. I am out there, and I have 30,000 people that are watching me, and I'm like, this is a high risk moment for me. And I was not totally sure how it was going to land. To be honest with you, I absolutely was convinced that someone was going to be like, oh, I feel bad, or like that kind of bullshit, pity feeling. I was not going to do it for that reason, for sure. And then when I put it out there, I was bold enough to let my comms team help me kind of tune it so it was right. And then it had this enormous lift, both personally for me, because I was like, oh my God, this is so scary for me to do. But then the feedback was wonderful. And the thought of oh, brave of you to say this, and how much you're helping the young people that are struggling with this, and that's not public, and there's a stigma around it. And it allowed me to say something out loud that was extraordinarily scary, but it empowered me to do more of that. And I have one more example. My father died, and he was my in 2019. So it's a while back, but not long enough ago, because I still feel the pain super sharp. And I remember someone came in in a different situation and asked me in a moment, because I came back to work way too fast because I needed work, give me some comfort. And I was at Ad Age at the time, and they said to me, just an innocuous question, like the how you doing? And it just glanced off me sort of in a moment of I was reading an email, and I was like, I'm a mess. I'm an absolute mess. And being able to be vulnerable like that and express that sort of honesty was extraordinarily powerful. And I would say to you that the power of vulnerability isn't in weakness. It actually isn't. It gives a strength that is seemingly counterintuitive. But being vulnerable and saying, I'm not actually okay right now, is extraordinarily powerful.
I agree with that. I had a similar experience as a cancer survivor. Can I flip this over though to the business side?
Yeah, please.
Where vulnerability of not knowing what you're supposed to do as leader, where do people cross the line on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to do it if you. I feel.
I'm sorry, I should have been more clear in this question. because all these personal things are kind of facts and they're out there, and eventually some of them discoverable. Like when I had cancer, I couldn't really hide it. Um, but but the business side, you can hide a lot of it. How do you give our viewers some guardrails on the vulnerability on the business side?
Yeah. So I have a hard and fast rule on vulnerability, which could be contra, but call it a hot take. You have to be self-aware about how you're feeling in a moment. I have a thing that I'm passionate about called the 24-hour rule. If someone says something to me that pisses me off, like really makes me actually mad, I think to myself, this is not a business response. I'm having an emotional response to something that they said that it's sort of in my history.
Yeah.
I have this great story that my father told me when I was older, but my mother went downstairs to make a sandwich, and it was like a cheese on a piece of bread, and she was melting it. And then my father walked down, and then he saw this in the toaster, and then he ate the Muenster cheese that was being toasted. And then for the whole day, they argued about the Muenster cheese sandwich that you stole. Now, were my parents arguing about the cheese sandwich? No, they were arguing about the failing business that was happening, but they needed Muenster cheese to argue. They needed that medium. I would say in business, it's so very easy to argue about the Muenster cheese and not actually focus on the thing that's first frustrating or upsetting. And I say that is a hard and fast rule. That 24-hour rule is really important to follow because it allows you to say, this is upsetting me in a way that is putting a 10 on a 2. I'm responding with a 10, but it's actually a 2. And I think that we really all need to be recognize vulnerability is good, but it's not great if you're having an emotional response to something you really shouldn't need to.
I think this is a super important thing, which is and I like the 24-hour rule. I have that also, which is you distill the business from the personal reaction, because a lot of times people can just try and piss you off in business anyways.
Yeah.
How about when your team is saying, hey, Josh, we need a plan here. What is your thinking? And you don't have one.
See, I
want to hear the Muenster cheese woven into this too, because we're gonna have old monsters.
I will tell you that I have surrounded myself with extraordinarily powerful people, and they all have great thoughts, and I put them in that position so that they can be the executive leaders that they are at the company. And in my past life, same kind of people. I've always surrounded myself with people who are way smarter at their thing than I am at their thing. Although I have thoughts and opinions, I tend to whisper them on the side. I will tell you that when someone asks me, we're not sure what we're doing, what should we do? I will come up with 2 or 3 answers very quickly because I grew up in the world of drama, and improv for me is like, I got thoughts like this, baby. So no problem. But I will tell you that I tend to ask them, if in fact this were your business, what would you do? What would you do? Forget all the emotions, forget all the people, forget everything else. But I want to know, what would you do right now to solve this particular problem? And it would be like, I would get rid of Susie and hire Johnny. That's at least an answer. And then at least starts the sort of evolution of an idea. Because if we're really there with 0 and they're coming to me with nothing, then I would say that you haven't done your job to prep the situation. Here's the 4 things that we could do. What do you think we should execute?
And I would say, if I distill this, there's a difference between being in charge and knowing the answer. And what I hear you saying is, you can still be leader if you don't know the answer, but you have to be graceful about getting the answer and getting the team involved. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that I'm always, it's funny, as I've gotten more and more senior in my life and my roles, I get to do less and less marketing, which is wild. And so when there's a chance to actually do marketing things, I'm like, I love that I'm getting involved in this sort of level of complexity, whether it's a comms thing or a campaign idea. And I would say 0 times out of a million, my team has come to me and says, we don't know how to solve this. They all know how to solve it.
They all have an opinion, right?
They have an opinion for sure, but it's more about me providing, well, how do I structure what it is that we know the answer needs to be and get it through what is a delicate way to maneuver through, the world of corporate America. And that is much more of my job than it is marketing.
Look, we call 90% chief, 10% marketing. And I wanna flip to the personal brand
Yes.
because we've talked about vulnerability. Let's talk about personal brand. What is it and why is it important? And then we'll talk about how you build it.
Yeah. So personal brand for me is I'm a big believer in the personal brand, because the marketer has, well, so what a personal brand is basically the you part of the marketing role. It's the thing that it's your joie de vivre. It's the thing,
And it transcends
that makes me.
your company, where you're actually a name
Yes.
within the
Yes. I'm a
company, but
name.
also outside the company. You're a
Yes.
known thing.
I'm a known entity. So they want to bring in a Josh Golden, like I'm the person that helps a company go from where it's been to where they want it to go. They want to effectively modernize. I did it at Ad Age when we went from advertising age to Ad Age. I did it, when I was at NBC, when we didn't have a digital function and we stood up the digital function, NBC Universal. All the times I've been brought in to be like, hey, can you do the thing where it gets us from where we are to where we need to be? That's the Josh Golden kind of like thing.
Yeah.
And so that's my personal brand. I'm that guy that has both enthusiasm, I believe.
Yeah, I wish you would be a little more enthusiastic on this.
I'm going to show it today on the podcast, but I'm trying to rein it in. And I think personal brand is extraordinarily important, because the marketer's job, as we discussed, and Seth Batlin came up earlier, is we're always in this state of evolution. The marketer is like, do they get to stay and continue doing their job, or do they have to go to there's a new opportunity to do that same thing somewhere else? So my opinion is the personal brand can be a double-edged sword, which is where we're going to get to. You need the personal brand because they need to know, like, well, what can a Josh Golden like object do at this brand? So that's why I got the job at Quad, because they're like, hey, we've been in this wonderful work in manufacturing. Can you get us into, more of the marketing services? Sure, I can do that. I'm going to help you. Here's the problem and the risk. Many times, great and wonderful marketers, personal brand in the teeter-totter is too big, and it becomes the brand. And then the company was like, wait, we are not getting enough of the sunlight. And so the personal brand part of that portion becomes so much that it overshadows the brand. And then you get fired, which is bad.
And how do you gauge that? Because, well, you can get a lot of PR if you have a good personal brand. You could be recruited by a lot of companies.
Totally.
A lot of people inside your company can think, I hate that guy. Because he's really out there building his personal brand instead of working for us.
Right.
How do you gauge this? How do you measure it? How do you feel it?
Read the room, Mike. My opinion is, and I'm endlessly doing this, listening. You have to endlessly listen to, what does the brand need? What does the brand need right now? And if you are pushing your personal story more than you're pushing the brand story, then that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is, I have wonderful people that work with me and work for me. If you're feeling that it's more about you than it is about the people that work for you and with you, then you are pushing your things too much. So two things: you have the opportunity to put your personal brand into service of the brand. Like, I'm here as a representative of Quad. I'm not here as representing Josh Golden. I'd love, if I could make the rest of this all about Quad, I totally would. I recognize you wanted to talk about vulnerability.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, Josh.
I know. But I'm telling you, like, my inclination is to endlessly bring up Quad because I love this brand. I'm passionate about this brand. And I am always balancing how much me, how much Quad. And if you as a brand advocate are not thinking, how much am I going to be balancing things that make me famous and things that make my brand famous, and always erring on the side of, I want to make my brand famous more than me, that'll always help you and keep you in a good stead with people that are inside your company saying, yeah, he talked about himself a little bit, but most of it was about the growth of Quad.
Well, and I think that's also make sure you get famous because you are building your brand versus
do your job well.
Two rules I have had, which is, I try and find somebody, at least one or two people in the company, that will actually tell me the truth. And the second thing is, when in doubt, don't do the personal brand stuff. If you think it's too edgy or you think you're out on that edge, just don't do it, because Once you get to a place where the company thinks, gosh, it's all about Josh and it's not about Quad,
That
then, I mean, you get fired or people start undermining you. But tell us what happens when people get too big, their personal brand gets too big, and then
yeah.
how to recover from it.
Yeah, I will tell you that when you hear a marketer say, I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that, those people are in danger, danger Will Robinson mode. It's really bad because you feel for that person as you're watching them, on stage or doing their thing. And like, I know you did that work, but you didn't really do it. So I would say that if your personal brand is bigger than the company brand and you feel that teeter totter is misaligned, you have to make certain that you are working very, very hard to reorient yourself and make certain that the opportunity for visibility for the brand becomes tantamount, that you soften all of your visible exposure and go and push heavy into that because you've misweighted it. You can still fix it. I think you can still fix it. But the double-edged sword of it is you need to make certain you don't diminish yourself so much that you lose your power, but you need to push endlessly on the opportunity to make the brand at least more famous than you. But in true deference to marketers out there, we all have to use our own brand and the brand that we work for, and we have to balance it. But it is a balancing act. I'm not going to say it's easy.
So I hear you saying you're in a movie, but the main actor is always the company you work for.
It is.
You are always in a supporting role.
Yes.
The other thing that complicates that, though, at least from my perspective, is a lot of marketers get to do really cool things. A bunch of people go to sporting events or
That's great.
or con or whatever, and you're already out there usually doing pretty cool things. If you're self-aggrandizing from that space, it just can put a target on you.
Yeah.
How do people manage that when they get to do cool things or they get a lot of press? Other than making sure you're supporting actor.
Yeah, the best thing to do is not to go and send the people that when you say the word we, you mean these people. You push out those people and say, you are ready and you have been ready for prime time for a long time. And I'm going to actually sit this one out. Yeah. And I believe that people who have a great personal brand, that you don't need to be out every time at Cannes. Cannes is awesome and sweaty, and although not this year, it's important to make certain that you're giving other people the ability to take the seat on the stage that you probably could do, but they might do it better. And I think that's really important to think about that. And that the people that, if you're listening well enough, which is I feel so passionately about, personal people who have a good, strong personal brand are listening like you do to others and saying, hey, maybe I need to pivot how we're doing this, and listening to individuals and how they operate, making certain that you're taking advantage of pushing other people forward, and also having the wherewithal to know, and people that you trust to tell you, like, how's this going? Is this landing? Because a lot of
once you get in the red zone, it's way harder to get out. And
way harder.
I have to say a couple of things. One, we've referenced 2 TV shows from way back, which is Lost in Space and The Munsters. So,
see that? Gen Z lives. Gen Z lives.
Yes, there you go.
Gen X. Sorry, Gen X.
Yeah, some Gen. I want to go to another topic that you're passionate about, which is rebrands. And let's talk about CMOs and rebrands, because you've been in a lot of rebrands, and let's talk about how you think about that, especially if you're a name or a famous CMO.
Yeah, I mean, it's the standard move, right? You come in the job and you're like, first thing I'm going to do is fire the agency and rebrand the company, because that's what a marketer is supposed to do.
Just so you know, before we go on, I've never fired the agency when I've come in ever. I think that's a bad sign, but go ahead.
I think that unfortunately it is a little bit of the move. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever done that standard move, but I will tell you, when I came into Quad, Joel Quadracci, it's not like I could change the name of the company because it's connected to their last name.
There,
So that wasn't going to happen. But what we had was a very interesting conversation about the value of signaling to the marketplace a change, because that's what my job was, to help that happen.
right.
So what we worked on through some good and passionate conversations were figuring out, well, what is it that we need to make happen? And what we arrived at was a relaunching of a design system that was effectively based on the original logo, but it allowed us to signal the marketplace and like have these big ads in Cannes and take over the airport in Nice. That was a Wisconsin company, taking over the airport. It was nuts, but like was a great moment for the brand and a wonderful moment to signal the shift that Quad has been, evolving to. So I would argue that the signature moment for a brand doesn't necessarily have to be a rebrand, but it can. Most marketers look for some sort of splashy moment to happen when they first start their job, and I would argue that you really need to, as a personal brand advocate, figure out where the chess pieces are before you jump into a specific tactic. And I have found that many times, you might, decide to move out your rook first, and then, or your knight first, and that becomes an opportunity to the temperature of brand is perceived in the marketplace.
Hey, let's talk about rebrands, because one of the things a lot of companies want a rebrand. How do you know when the brand is actually rebranded for real? Like what?
That's sort of
other
question. Hot take. So we just saw Jaguar rebrand, and I remember back in the I think it's late '90s, the Tropicana rebranded and they unrebranded. So it is certainly. It's funny enough. I would say a rebrand has to be accepted by the brand organism. Marketing can do a lot of things to move the assets around, but if the organism of the company does not accept it, it will be rejected. So you have to do a lot of what I would argue is internal listening and understanding, and making certain that you don't mess with the thing that is religion to the brand. For example, for Quad, our Quad bug, the logo that represents the entirety of our company, is this. This is the bug. You can't mess with the bug. It's 53 years old. It is the thing that's defined the brand for 53 years. So religion, you cannot mess with it, but you use it as an asset to help the brand evolve. My belief is that it is a wonderful tool, but it is not the only tool in the marketer's tool shed. They need to open their eyes and look at other opportunities that might exist for them to have to recognize the goals of what they're trying to achieve with the partnership.
And I will add one thing to that. I think a bunch of people think the rebrand is done when the effort hits the marketplace. But what I hear you saying, and I support it, is the rebrand isn't done until the consumer accepts it and the company accepts it.
Exactly.
And
it's a long process, and it allows you to have that.
The activity, you can't confuse the activity with the outcome. The outcome is the marketplace and how the company actually views itself. Fair?
Yeah, and also, yes, and also the board, everyone in the whole ecosystem has to see the benefit of what something like that will bring. It is not the, wow, check out our new logo, it's so hot. Right. That is I doubt any marketer would ever say that is the thing that's their signature thing. It's never going to be that. It's, well, why did you do that? Why did Jaguar do this? There was a big reason. Why? It's because the company had become a little invisible. So they wanted to become visible. I would argue, well, whether or not you like the new branding or not, it doesn't matter, because it's a conversation now, and it's become now even talked about on this podcast, right? So this work that marketers need to do is just a piece. It's a sliver of it as the actual design piece.
I think Jaguar is an excellent example of, fine, you did a step.
Right, one thing.
We will see how the marketplace company actually reacts to that, but you have a long way to go before you've rebranded Jaguar. And
absolutely,
there are different opinions.
Because we all know that brand has extraordinary longevity. Sorry for interrupting. Extraordinary longevity with wonderful brand that we all recognize as an actual animal in the jungle, and now it's changed to type treatment. So that's an interesting first step. Let's see what you do with it. What
really happens. Yeah, let's see what happens to the old users and the new users.
Yes,
I mean, it's an interesting story. So we are getting towards the end of the show. We have our traditional last question.
Oh,
which is,
okay. I'm ready.
all right, it's two-parter. You can take one or both, but you must take at least one. And it's funniest story you can tell on the air,
Oh,
and
geez.
or practical advice we haven't discussed yet. You can take one or
Okay,
both.
I got to tell you, no, I can't tell it. I've in my latter years, Mike, I've learned that a filter is important to have, but I have some.
We
When
hate
you-
filters on CMO. Just let her rip, John.
Let me switch to practical advice. I saw my friend Charlie Fiordalis just post something recently on his LinkedIn, and it was about 10 things he wished he knew before he started his job in marketing and advertising. And I will tell you that I talk to a lot of young people, and I teach classes at NYU and Columbia, and I have this strong opinion about gratitude. And unfortunately, the younger folks don't really ascribe to this philosophy, and I think it's really important to have it said. When someone does something for you, at whatever level they happen to be, whether they're a boss or a huge Uber person or just someone down the street, showing and displaying gratitude, whether it's in a thank you note or a deep appreciation or something that you do for them, is extraordinarily important. And I will tell you that I am so passionate about this that I literally do not hire people if they don't send a follow-up note. I know, contro, but like if someone does not send me a note to thank me for my time, and listen, I meet with everybody that comes into the Quad organization on the marketing side because I give a shit about the culture of the people that join. And if they do not have the wherewithal to say, hey, Josh, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated this part of the conversation and what you said about where we're going and what the company is doing, blah, 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 blah. Thank you, Harold. And that note doesn't come to me. I am a hard no on hiring them because they don't understand the subtlety of what marketing delivers, which is I have to show deep appreciation and understanding for my audience and then deliver on that. So practical advice, which I think is important, is having and displaying gratitude because we are all in service to the brands that we work for and the teams that we work with. And if you are not showing gratitude, it's a mistake and people will root you out.
And this goes back to how we open the show, which is be an authentic, genuine leader, and genuine appreciation matters. So
it really does.
So thank you, Josh. Thanks to everyone for listening to CMO Confidential, and special thanks to props.co, our sponsor. Look for more of our shows on the I Hear Everything Network, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube, which include Marketing, The Battle Between Believers and Non-Believers, Parts 1, 2, and 3. The Rise and Fall of Peloton as seen through the eyes of customer lifetime value, and Why the Short Shelf Life of CMOs. Hey, all you marketers, stay safe out there. This is Mike Linton signing off for CMO Confidential.